Frontiers Sonic has been building momentum for quite some time now. First revealed in 2023, it took until October of 2025 for the Cybertest Demo to be released to the general public. Enough time for attitudes on the mod's source material to move from universal acclaim to a more controversial stance. Despite that, hype for the character has remained high, partially due to the sheer ambition on display, and partially, perhaps more cynically, because it promises a modern Sonic experience while Motley Spork delays V6's release for another half-decade. I've always been somewhat aware of the community building around the mod, so when I was asked by the developers, a group known as Team Starfall, to cover the mod in mid-November, I told them that I would get onto it. Unfortunately, other priorities meant that I couldn't get to working on my review until just before Christmas, and while I tried to work on scripting at the same time as meeting family and doing all of the other Christmas activities, I was getting nowhere. Since then, it's been script rewrites and channel rebranding and a dozen other things that have made the production of this video take almost 2 months. So while I would like to apologise for being gone for so long, I am glad that it was spent on this mod because Frontiers Sonic is a treat. Now, I was invited to become a playtester for Team Starfall after I streamed some Frontiers Sonic gameplay, a position which I have accepted, but please do not worry about my review being biased or otherwise a fluff piece. I've been pretty absent from my duties, what with the aforementioned distractions considered, and I wouldn't be a particularly good playtester if I wasn't brutally honest in my assessments. I simply, genuinely believe my time spent with Frontiers Sonic's Cybertest Demo to have been great fun, and I hope that after this review, you'll go and try it out for yourself. Though, do wait until I'm finished, okay? As an immediate testament to Team Starfall's aforementioned ambition, Frontiers Sonic doesn't just replicate the experience of a single Sonic game. It replicates the experiences of 2. Of course, the meat of the character lies in his primary mode, which replicates Sonic Frontiers and will be the focus of most of this review. But deep in the options menu, a menu we'll be returning to often, you'll find a toggle to instead replicate Sonic Adventure. If this is an experience you're looking for, you're still better off looking to Adventure Sonic with his more complete moveset and more accurate physics, but I still had a lot of fun with this. The bounce especially is great, perhaps even a little bit overpowered, as you can choose most platforming and enemy encounters by spamming it, but the air dash and remap spin dash also offer a different side to the character. Just be aware that you will need to go into the console to change back to Frontier style, as the usual in-game command no longer works. A minor problem that I think most will never even notice, because I'm not sure how many players will even ever interact with this mode, but it should be considered a relatively pressing quality of life change. Though for all of the fun that Adventure style can provide, it is undeniably still an unnecessary extravagance. The default Frontier style by itself still offers a unique and expansive modern Sonic experience that, for as much as Team Starfall seems to want to invite comparison, feels quite different to Motley Spork's approach. By the time Sonic Frontiers released, the boost formula as it had existed for the prior 15 years had become much maligned, especially in the wake of Forces. Calls for a freer, more open gameplay formula necessitated that the next release have a slower, more platforming-oriented gameplay loop with just a sprinkling of momentum physics, and it's possible to view modern Sonic and Frontier Sonic in a similar light. Modern Sonic was all about raw speed in straight lines, and his approach to platforming was to make it redundant by soaring over it. Frontier Sonic is comparatively slower, but I find his performance in stages like Red Volcano and Egg Rock to be much stronger, and I think there's a better sense of flow to be found here. Anyone who's seen one of the many reviews where I bring up flow will know how much I value it, and in my eyes, one of Frontier's Sonic's best traits is just how well he is able to maintain it through most of what the game can throw at him. The expansive moveset on offer, which includes boosts, spin dashes, drop dashes, stomps, slides, and more, means he has tools for many situations, whether he's faced with long corridors or platforming challenges. He's most certainly a speedster, but I think he's one of the most dynamic and involved characters in their roster. After all, it's an archetype that ultimately incentivizes you to interact with the level design as little as possible, and Sonics especially quite rigidly adhere to that, so it's fun to see one that breaks the mold a little bit just by having value outside of being fast. Much like Frontiers proper, the freeform nature of the moveset means that you can't always tell how you made it through a platforming challenge, though you can definitely tell it wasn't how you were supposed to go about it, but you will make it in some capacity. Frontier Sonic is a generous character who will often allow you to get to places despite the sloppiness of your attempt, making him quite forgiving. When characters have movesets as expansive as this, there can often be that level of annoyance or frustration when you first pick them up, as you get to grips with how their abilities are intended to be used. Not so much here though, for many reasons. You're likely familiar with the moveset already, seeing as it's ripped from the most popular Sonic game in the last 2 decades. The abilities are also quite intuitive, whether that's because you'll have doubtlessly seen them before in other movesets, or because of how well they've been implemented. They also build off each other quite well. Whereas a lot of characters have quite linear progression paths, where you need to understand how one ability works to make good use of the next, it feels like most of Frontier's Sonics branch off in their own way, so you can get to grips with them in the order that makes sense to you. That said, there are a few abilities that feel a little underbaked. Chief among them is, unfortunately, the Psyloop, which is a little awkward when it's the only wholly unique ability Frontier Sonic has. While I admire Team Starfall's attempt to try and add this, it just doesn't do anything in its current state outside of a few extremely niche situations that I only knew about from the team's direct correspondence. It can lift up a few enemies, which I'm sure will be more important when combat beyond the homing attack is introduced, but its only purpose otherwise is removing Brack Eggman's electric shield and refilling your rings during a boss fight. There are quite a few things like this in the Cybertest Demo, functions and features that are clearly unfinished or designed to work with currently non-existent features. Another example is found in the options menu, where you can find a toggle that changes the music for the currently unimplemented superform. This is usually the case in demos, but perhaps as a side effect of the clear ambition here, I can't recall one that so brazenly felt like it was missing key aspects. The other major flaw is carried over from Frontiers. This options menu gives you way too many options. It's nice being able to change a lot of the effects and toggling between Frontiers and Adventure style, but I shouldn't have to be going into this and changing things like acceleration and air resistance. I shouldn't have had to do it in Frontiers, I shouldn't have to do it here. I understand the desire for accuracy to your source material, but it's good to deviate in places where the source is severely flawed. Much like Frontiers, the base values for some of these modifiers make Sonic feel really stiff. So here's my advice to any new players who don't want to spend time messing with all of this themselves. Firstly, drop your air resistance as low as possible. It's automatically set to 50, which makes it so you really need to hold forward before you go anywhere. And I think I dropped it all the way down to 0, which felt much better. The stealth start is set automatically to 55, and you want to weaken it by at least 10 to 15 points. Do any less than that, and Sonic sticks to the ground quite awkwardly, making it very difficult to do anything more precise than a flat-out run. Lowering it makes Sonic a little less sticky, so it's easier to run without having to over-exaggerate your movement inputs as much. While you're at it, up your acceleration and turn on Ring Attract. It makes Sonic just that little bit faster, and Ring Attract lets you be a little looser with your boosting. There's a reason all of the official games give you a very slight magnet effect when the boost is active, so give it to yourself here as well. Finally, change your homing VFX. Although the name says it's a visual change, changing the setting actually seems to affect how the homing attack works. Selecting anything other than the default one felt like it made it easier to combo homing attacks in mid-air, although I couldn't discern any differences between the other three beyond that. I was originally quite a bit more negative about Frontier Sonic, but after I made these changes to make him feel less restrained, I found he grew on me quite quickly. If you were struggling, then try these tweaks and see if that doesn't fix some of your problems. It doesn't fix everything, because there are still some problems relating to hitboxes and a few inconsistencies with inputs, and I really don't like how far you're thrown back when you get hit, but all of that became a lot more minor when my other complaints had been resolved. Frontiers didn't exactly showcase Sonic's best side. I'm one of the few who appreciates the decision to go for a somewhat realistic approach to the world design, and I think the UI has its charm, though it's nowhere near as good as some other titles in the franchise. But that character model is not it. It put Team Starfall at another impasse as they were once again faced with the prospect of adapting a facet to the game that could really do a significant improvement. And they've once again gone with authenticity over making changes for the better. What we have here is passable, definitely an incarnation of modern Sonic, but you'd probably find better in basically any other semi-professional attempt at the character. Shaping is flawed throughout, although that is likely at least partly due to the source material. The blue chosen is just a little too purple for my taste, and a lot of the animations feel unfinished. That latter point is undoubtedly, at least partially due to the fact that this is still a demo release, but there are a lot of actions that currently lack full turnarounds, and extracting the sprites using Slade showed just how many placeholders are still in place. I do appreciate the decision to package in a UI overhaul, although it's another aspect of the Cybertest demo that was seemingly released as an early draft. What you see in the level is pretty much perfect, even with the boost meter randomly being made into a 3D object instead of a flat graphic. I like it, it's just a bit of a strange place to break from the source material for the first time. What you see after beating a stage or opening the menu is not so strong, although some of their shortcomings can be blamed on SRB2's limited animation capabilities. Finding some way to have some sort of faint movement in the background would make them better match Frontiers proper, rather than being a plain block of grey. I do understand how infeasible that is though, which is why I'm not surprised that this is an area Team Starfall seems to be forging their own path in to make something new for future updates. And then one last aesthetical flourish I want to make mention of before concluding the video is the selection of boost effects on offer. Once again from the menu, you can select boost auras from plenty of Sonic games, including Rush, Dream Team, Colors, and more. You might have noticed that I've switched between multiple effects in the background footage, and that's because I like them all. I switched a lot to get some variety, although I think Colors and Rush are my personal favourites. Overall, Frontier Sonic is such a good mod, even in its demo form, that it tempted me to go back and revisit Frontiers itself. I dropped the game after Final Horizon caused all of the goodwill I had towards it to wither and fester away, and I hadn't touched it since. Team Starfall's imitation helped me to better understand what Sonic Team were trying to do with the changes made to the gameplay formula, and after spending the last 2 years viewing many of those changes in a strictly negative light, this experience has done well to make me concede that many actually were for the better. I can now see how they polished some of its rougher sides to make Shadow Generations, which ended up being one of my favourite Sonic games out there, and revisiting the game helped me realise just how much of that formula was always there. If nothing else, this mod is a great advertisement for Frontiers, and it turns out that that moveset really shines when placed in SRB2, a game with a greater emphasis on platforming and momentum. As a new incarnation of the modern Sonic concept, Frontiers Sonic has done more than enough to stand out against the many other attempts made for SRB2, primarily by being a slower and more agile option. While I do think that it can stand toe-to-toe with Motley Spork's version of the Blue Blur in the places where it feels finished, it does unfortunately fall short as a whole of being the canonical incarnation due to how it is unfinished. Between the lack of a superform, the missing sprites, the quality of life flaws, and miscellaneous other things, it never escaped me that I was indeed playing a demo, and while I can certainly recommend it already, I could also see people choosing to wait until they can play a more complete version. I have no doubt that Frontier Sonic will become a worthy contender to modern Sonic's dominance of the message boards when that demo disclaimer is removed from his title, because he already is in many ways. But despite how much I enjoyed my time with him, he's not quite there yet. With that said, many thanks for Team Starfall for their help in explaining some of the problems I had with the mod, as well as for offering me a playtester position, and thank you to everyone who made it to this point in the video. I know how long the wait has been, and I can promise that uploads will become faster as I settle back into a video making rhythm. For now though, I hope you enjoyed the video, and ciao.